I'm on here to give you a little background on the American Society of Civil Engineers. Very, very long-running group that I'm very proud to be the president of this year. Um, and to tell you a little bit about it, USC's chapter here is actually about 100 years old, so it's really a long-standing thing. The ASCE is what we call it for short. So its alphabet soup name is the American Society of Civil Engineers. It was started back in the late 1800s, and it's basically a professional society that all civil engineers join when they go into industry at a later date. And ASCE is responsible for different standards in building codes, hazard preventions, but then there's layers to it. And so we are a student chapter club here at the university, but there's clubs at hundreds of universities across the country, and there's even some internationally. And we put on student events for people to get involved while they're still at university to then go on at their later date in their emerging professional and later career.
So I'm going to ask you about that student half first, and then we can talk about the professional half, which is interesting to me personally. But student events, what's that look like?
So it's a number of things. I can give you some personal perspective, kind of like wider ranging. So primary emphasis across all of the ASCE chapters and ours in particular is getting people the skills they need and they're looking for, and then the context of those. So our bread and butter are these design teams. Our main one, the most front runner people might have seen, might not have known it's ASE, but it's called Concrete Canoe. Build a concrete canoe and race it. Believe it or not, they do float most of the time. There's also Steel Bridge, Timber Strong, building a miniature bridge, building a miniature house for Timber Strong. There's sustainable construction, retrofitting, which is called sustainable solutions. There is GeoWall, which is basically an earth wall and testing that's integrity. There's environmental design and transportation design. And so there's a plethora of these, and there's more that are in different specific regions, but those are the seven teams that we have. And they prepare people and give them a glimpse at something practical, building teams, leading projects, and developing those skills for employers, all the while getting exposure and kind of seeing what it might be like to run projects in the civil engineering space. And so that's kind of what most of the societies do. We compete at annual competitions, most notably here in the Pacific Southwest. It's called PSWS. Everything's got an acronym. If you've listened to this podcast long enough, everything in Viterbi's got its letters. And
It's
we
very construction management, civil engineering of us to have abbreviations for literally everything.
Everything does. CE, civil engineering, that is the department's acronym too. But basically we compete in these different programs. That's like what we mainly do, but then other than that for the student experience, on the note of getting people exposure to companies, we company sponsors, alumni come in from the companies they work at. We just had Arup last week. Arup is a large civil engineering firm with some great alumni that came in to show us about what they're doing, projects they're working on. They've worked on the USC Village. If uh, if you've seen it, it's a glorious project here. I had the pleasure of living in it myself, freshman and sophomore year. And
It is absolutely wonderful.
yeah, it's great stuff. So we try to bring people in and give context on industry. And there's a couple other small things that we like to do, and there's new things that we're doing this year. Emphasis on making policy more prevalent because ASC has a big nonpartisan lobbying group to
Oh,
Congress.
this I didn't know about.
Yeah, it's one of the parts I'm most interested in. The ASCE is responsible for giving technical advisement to Congress because a lot of the standards and building codes that are governed by advice from ASCE, those are forlayed to Congress and representatives. So I'm actually a part of the ASCE government relations for our national level. We went to DC this past spring. We go every year. It's called the Fly-In. It's something I'm trying to get our chapter more involved in. It's representatives from each of the 50 states go to Congress. You meet your representatives. You give them nonpartisan technical advice on like bills that are coming up in the House and things to advise on.
I never, wow. And you participate in that because you're a member of ASE.
Yes, this past year, represented Pennsylvania, flew into DC. It's like mid-March. It was my first year involved in that. And then there's also like a report card for the country that they write every 4 years. And so
Yeah.
that's the presentation of that to Congress to say, like, here's where the state of our country's infrastructure is at. And so it's a bit of an audit. of where we're at. So ASCE has many parts. Is kind of the summary. If you take anything away from this, ASCE is multifaceted.
Yeah. Big, massive presence in our field. I know that in my structural design class, we're directly referencing ASCE standards for our homeworks, which is in some part cool because I'm a member of this organization, and in some parts annoying because there are infinite tables to go down. That's structural design class.
Great class, lots of good information. But yeah, ASC is everywhere. And the house you're in right now is regulated by ASC to some degree, probably. So
So, speaking on you as president, I'm sure it's going to be fun for you to go to DC and say, "Oh, I'm the president of ASCE, well, my chapter." But as president, what does it look like running ASCE? I mean, for the people listening in, they don't know, are we a big org, small org? Uh, is what goes into the money that's involved in the club, etc.
we are blessed to have around a 20-person, give or take, e-board. And our club is just around 80 people. So we have a quarter of the people who are really heavily involved with managing it, and that kind of comes in with its many parts. So there's many different facets and things to manage. So it's great because it's mostly people I've known for 4 years and get to work with my friends. Blessing and a curse, I might say. It's there's things that have to get done, and there's a lot we're trying to do, and things that have to happen. So it's great. Sometimes it can be a lot of work, but I think it's the work that goes in is what we get out of it. And when there's an org that's 100 years old, I often think a lot of times of like people who came before me and made this group possible. Most notably, are my good friend and who was president last year, Kyle Rivale. He did a
Shout out
fantastic
Kyle.
job. Shout out Kyle, always and forever. He built this chapter back up to what it's at, about 80 people. During COVID, for context, it was around 12 people. Very
Oh,
small.
wow.
And I mean, kind of because of his foresight, you might think like, oh, it's a club. What does that matter? But it really does in terms of giving people perspective for what they can expect in the field and having these opportunities. It just comes by student initiative, and people like Kyle made it possible. Um, so it's keeping the momentum from years prior and kind of honoring a legacy that it was started in the early 1920s here on our campus. Um, in terms of you asked about money and financials and stuff, we do have some budgets that come from the school and some funding to make these design teams. They aren't cheap. Um, on the order of a couple thousands of dollars that we have to spend every year to prepare these design teams, especially like canoe, like you're buying a bunch of concrete and mixes and timber and
Yeah.
steel. And so that has to be purchased every year. But overall, I mean, it takes a large chunk of people to make this happen and manage these design teams. And our e-board is fantastic, and they put in the work because they know what they'll get out of it. And so I've much respect for everyone who steps up to help us lead this group of people.